The plane touched down on American soil just after 3 in the afternoon. Marcus Thompson felt his heart beat faster as the wheels hit the runway. After 18 long months away from home, he was finally back. He looked out the small window and saw the familiar landscape of his home state. Everything looked the same, yet somehow different after so much time away. Marcus gathered his old duffel bag from the overhead compartment. He was wearing simple clothes, blue jeans, a gray hoodie, and worn sneakers. After months in uniform, civilian clothes felt strange on his body. He was tired, so very tired, the kind of tired that comes from carrying heavy responsibilities for too long. But he was also excited. In just a few hours, he would see his wife Sarah and their 2 children, Emma and James. The small regional airport was quiet. Most passengers had already left. Marcus walked through the terminal slowly, adjusting to being back home. Everything felt almost too peaceful after the constant noise and tension of deployment. He checked his phone and saw several messages from Sarah. She wanted to know when he would arrive home. He smiled and typed a quick reply, telling her he would be there soon. As he walked outside, the afternoon sun felt warm on his face. Marcus took a deep breath of fresh air. No dust, no smell of fuel or equipment, just clean, normal air. He felt grateful for small things like this, things most people never thought about. Marcus had arranged for a rental car, but he decided to walk for a while first. He needed to stretch his legs and clear his mind. The transition from military life back to civilian life was always difficult. His mind was still in command mode, always planning, always watching for danger. He needed time to adjust. He walked through a quiet neighborhood near the airport. Nice houses lined the streets. Trees provided shade on the sidewalks. Children played in some yards. It was the kind of peaceful American scene that he had been protecting while overseas. This was what he fought for, the safety and peace of ordinary life. Marcus remembered he wanted to bring something special home to his family. Sarah loved flowers, especially roses. Emma had mentioned wanting a new book in her last letter. James wanted anything with superheroes on it. Marcus smiled thinking about his children. Emma was now 12 and James was 9. He had missed so much of their lives during this deployment. He saw a small convenience store ahead and decided to stop. The store had flowers in buckets outside and probably had some small gifts inside. It was perfect. Marcus walked toward the store, already imagining the expressions on his children's faces when they saw him. Inside the store, an elderly woman worked behind the counter. She smiled at Marcus when he entered. He smiled back and headed toward the small section with toys and books. He found a superhero action figure for James and a popular book series for Emma. Then he picked out a beautiful bouquet of red roses for Sarah. The elderly woman chatted with him as she rang up his items. She asked if the flowers were for someone special. Marcus told her about his wife and how he had been away for a long time. The woman's face brightened. She thanked him for his service when he mentioned he was in the military. Marcus felt touched by her kindness. These small moments of recognition meant more than people knew. Marcus left the store carrying his purchases and his duffel bag. He checked his phone again. Sarah had sent another message asking if everything was okay. He called her this time. Her voice made him feel warm inside. She sounded so happy, so excited. The children were jumping around in the background, screaming with joy. He promised he would be home very soon. As he walked down the quiet street, Marcus thought about the past 18 months. He had commanded over 800 troops in difficult conditions. He had made decisions that affected lives. He had seen things that would stay with him forever. But he had also seen courage, brotherhood, and sacrifice. He had served with honor, and now he was coming home to the people he loved most. The neighborhood around him was peaceful. A few cars passed by. A dog barked in the distance. Marcus felt himself beginning to relax. Soon he would be hugging his family. Soon he would sleep in his own bed. Soon life would return to normal, or at least as normal as it could be after such an experience. He thought about his career in the military. 20 years of service. He had risen through the ranks through hard work and dedication. From a young private to a colonel, it had been a journey filled with challenges but also with pride. He wore his rank with honor, though right now in his civilian clothes no one would know he was a colonel. No one would know about the medals in his bag or the men and women he had led. Marcus was just a man walking down a street, carrying flowers and gifts, heading home to his family. That was all he wanted to be in this moment, Not a commander, not a soldier, just Marcus. Just a husband and father who had been away too long. The sun was beginning to lower in the sky. Marcus calculated he could walk a bit more, then catch a taxi or rideshare to his house. He was in no rush now. He wanted to enjoy these moments of peace and quiet. He wanted to let the stress and responsibility slowly drain away before he reached home. His family deserved the best version of him, not the worn-out soldier carrying the weight of deployment. As he walked, Marcus noticed how beautiful everything seemed. The way the light hit the houses, the sound of birds singing, the laughter of children playing. These were the things he had dreamed about while overseas. These simple, beautiful moments of ordinary American life. He shifted the duffel bag on his shoulder and held the flowers carefully. Just a little longer and he would be home. Just a little longer and he could hold his wife and children. Just a little longer, and this chapter would close while a new one began. Marcus Thompson, colonel in the United States Army, walked peacefully down a quiet street in his hometown, completely unaware that in just a few minutes, his homecoming would take a turn he never expected. His training had prepared him for many dangers overseas, but nothing had prepared him for what was about to happen on this peaceful American street. Officer Derek Brennan sat in his patrol car, parked on the side of the quiet street. He was drinking coffee and looking at his phone. The afternoon had been slow, with no calls and no action. Brennan had been a police officer for 15 years. He thought he knew everything about his job and his community. He looked up from his phone and noticed a black man walking down the sidewalk. The man wore a hoodie and jeans and carried a duffel bag. Brennan's eyes narrowed. This was a nice neighborhood, mostly white families with money. In Brennan's mind, this man did not belong here. Brennan put down his coffee and started his car. He pulled out slowly and began following the man from behind. He watched every movement. The man was just walking normally, carrying flowers in his bag. But Brennan had made up his mind. Something was wrong. Someone like this did not belong in this neighborhood. Marcus heard the car behind him but did not think much of it. He was lost in thoughts about his family. Then he heard the sound that made his stomach drop, a police siren, just a quick burst. He turned around and saw the patrol car with its lights flashing. The car pulled up beside him and an officer stepped out. Marcus felt confused. He had done nothing wrong. He was just walking down a public street. He held his flowers and bag and waited to see what the officer wanted. "Stop right there," Brennan said, his hand resting on his belt near his weapon. "Let me see some identification." Marcus stayed calm. His military training kicked in. "Stay cool, follow instructions, be respectful." "Of course, officer," he said politely. "May I ask what this is about?" Brennan's face hardened. "I'll ask the questions. Show me your ID, now." Marcus slowly reached for his wallet. He moved carefully, keeping his hands visible. He had heard too many stories about situations like this going wrong. "I'm just reaching for my wallet in my back pocket," he said clearly. "Hurry up," Brennan snapped. He looked Marcus up and down with obvious suspicion and dislike. Marcus handed over his driver's license. Brennan looked at it, then looked at Marcus. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" "I'm heading home, officer," Marcus explained. "I just got back from overseas. I was in the military. I stopped to buy some gifts for my family." Brennan laughed, but it was not a friendly sound. "Sure you were. And I'm the president. What's really in that bag?" Marcus felt a flash of anger but controlled it. "Military gear, sir. Personal items from my deployment. I'm a soldier. I can show you my military ID if you—" "Empty your pockets," Brennan interrupted. "Put everything on the ground. And that bag too. Officer, I don't understand. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm just walking home." Brennan stepped closer, his voice getting louder. "You fit the description of someone we're looking for. Empty your pockets now." Marcus knew he had no real choice. He slowly put down the flowers in his bag. He took out his phone, his wallet, some coins, and his keys. He placed them on the ground as Brennan watched. "The bag too," Brennan ordered. Marcus unzipped his duffel bag. Inside were his military uniforms, his medals, photos from deployment, and personal letters. He started to take items out, but Brennan grabbed the bag from him and dumped everything onto the sidewalk. Military medals scattered across the concrete. Photos of Marcus with his unit fell into the dirt. His carefully folded uniforms tumbled out. Marcus watched in disbelief as this officer treated his most precious possessions like trash. "Please, officer, those are my service medals," Marcus said, trying to stay calm. His voice shook slightly. Brennan kicked through the items with his boot. He picked up a photo of Marcus in uniform. This could be anybody. Probably not even you. Where'd you steal this stuff? I didn't steal anything. That's me in the photo. I'm Colonel Marcus Thompson. I just returned from an 18-month deployment. If you would just listen, Colonel? Brennan laughed again, cruelly. Right, and I'm a general. You people always have some story. Always claiming to be something you're not. The words "you people" hung in the air. Marcus understood exactly what Brennan meant. This was not about a misunderstanding. This was about racism, pure and simple. Marcus had served his country for 20 years, led hundreds of soldiers, earned medals for bravery, and now he was being treated like a criminal on an American street. I want to speak to your supervisor, Marcus said firmly but politely. You'll speak to whoever I tell you to speak to, Brennan shot back. Turn around. Put your hands behind your back. What? Why, I haven't done anything. You're resisting and being uncooperative. Turn around now or I'll make you turn around. Marcus felt his heart racing, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting angry would only make things worse. He had commanded hundreds of soldiers through dangerous situations. He could handle this. He turned around slowly and put his hands behind his back. The handcuffs clicked around his wrists, tight and cold. Marcus felt humiliated. He was a colonel in the United States Army, and he was being handcuffed on a street for no reason. His medals lay scattered on the ground. His flowers were crushed. His personal items were in the dirt. People started coming out of their houses. Some held up their phones, recording. Marcus noticed a few faces showing concern and confusion. Others just stared. Brennan walked Marcus to the patrol car and made him sit on the curb. The concrete was hard and uncomfortable. Marcus sat there in handcuffs while Brennan went back to pick up his belongings, handling them roughly and stuffing them into the duffel bag without care. Marcus's phone rang in the pile of items on the ground. He saw Sarah's name on the screen. She would be worried now. He had promised to be home soon. Now he was sitting in handcuffs on a curb and he could not answer her call. Officer, please, my wife is calling. She's expecting me home. Can I at least tell her I'm delayed? No, Brennan said simply. He let the phone ring until it stopped. Another patrol car pulled up. A younger officer stepped out. A woman with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her name tag read Chen. She looked at the scene. Marcus in handcuffs on the curb, his belongings scattered around, the crowd of people watching and recording. Brennan, what's going on? Officer Chen asked, suspect fitting a description. Found him in a neighborhood where he doesn't belong, carrying a bag full of stolen military gear. Officer Chen looked confused. She walked over to where the items were scattered. She picked up one of the medals and examined it. Then she looked at the photos. Her expression changed. Brennan, these look real. This guy is in uniform in these pictures. And these medals, stolen, Brennan interrupted. He probably stole them from a real soldier. These people do that all the time. Officer Chen looked uncomfortable. I think we should call the sergeant. Let him sort this out. I don't need the sergeant. I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this job longer than you've been alive. You go handle your own calls and let me handle mine. Chen looked at Marcus, then at Brennan. She seemed torn. Finally, she walked back to her car, but she did not leave. She stayed watching and waiting. Marcus sat on the curb, hands cuffed behind his back, and wondered how his homecoming had turned into this nightmare. He had survived deployment in a war zone, only to be treated like a criminal in his own country. The afternoon sun beat down on him. His phone rang again, Sarah still trying to reach him. And still Brennan would not let him answer. Marcus had been sitting on the curb for 20 minutes. The handcuffs dug into his wrists. His back ached from the uncomfortable position. More people had gathered on the sidewalk across the street. At least a dozen phones were pointed in his direction, recording everything. He could hear people talking, asking what was happening, wondering what he had done. A woman's voice called out, "What did he do, officer?" Brennan ignored her and continued looking through Marcus's belongings. He had already run Marcus's driver's license through his computer in the patrol car. Everything came back clean. No warrants, no criminal record, not even a parking ticket. But Brennan did not seem satisfied. Officer Chen stood by her patrol car, shifting her weight from foot to foot. She looked nervous. Marcus could see her looking at her phone, then at Brennan, then back at her phone again. He hoped she was calling for a supervisor like she had suggested earlier. Marcus's phone rang for the 5th time. He could see it lying on the ground near his scattered belongings. Sarah's photo lit up the screen. His heart ached. She must be so worried by now. He had promised to be home hours ago. What must she be thinking? "Officer Brennan," Marcus said as calmly as he could manage. "Please, my wife keeps calling. She's expecting me home. She doesn't know where I am. Can I please just send her a quick message?" Brennan walked over and stood in front of Marcus. "Your wife can wait. We'll contact her if we decide to. Right now you need to sit there and be quiet." "I've been cooperative," Marcus said, trying to keep frustration out of his voice. "I've done everything you asked. I've been sitting here for almost half an hour. My information is clean. What exactly am I being detained for?" "You fit the description of a burglary suspect," Brennan said. "Until I verify your story, you stay right where you are." "What description?" "I haven't heard anything about a burglary." "What was stolen?" "When did it happen?" "You haven't told me anything." Brennan leaned down closer to Marcus. "Black male, medium build, wearing dark clothes, carrying a bag in this neighborhood. That's the description. That's you." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. That description could fit thousands of people. It was so vague it meant nothing. But he knew what it really meant. Brennan had seen a black man and decided he did not belong. "That description is too general," Marcus said. "It could be anyone, and I've shown you my identification. I've explained where I'm coming from. My military records are right there in front of you. What more do you need?" A man from the crowd called out, "He's been sitting there forever. Either charge him or let him go." Other voices joined in. "This is wrong. Leave him alone. He didn't do anything." Brennan's face turned red. "All of you need to back up and mind your own business, or I'll arrest you for interfering with an investigation." The crowd moved back slightly but did not leave. More people were arriving, drawn by the commotion. Marcus noticed a news van pulling up at the end of the block. This was becoming a bigger scene than anyone wanted. Officer Chen finally walked over to Brennan. She looked determined now, not nervous. "Brennan, I called Sergeant Rodriguez. He's on his way. He wants us to wait for him before we proceed." Brennan's face got even redder. "You had no right to do that. I'm the senior officer here. I make the decisions." "The crowd is getting bigger," Chen said carefully. "This is being recorded by at least 20 people. The news just showed up. The sergeant needs to know what's happening." "Nothing is happening except me doing my job," Brennan snapped.
"This suspect, he's not a suspect," Chen interrupted.
"His license is clean. Those military items look real. His story makes sense. And that description you mentioned?" I checked. "There was no burglary report in this area today, none." Marcus's head snapped up. "No burglary?" Brennan had lied. There was no actual reason for this stop at all. Brennan's eyes blazed with anger at Officer Chen. "Are you questioning me? Because if you are, we can discuss your insubordination with the chief." "I'm just stating facts," Chen said, but her voice wavered slightly. Marcus could see she was scared but trying to do the right thing. He felt grateful for her courage. Marcus's legs were cramping from sitting in one position so long. His shoulders ached from having his arms behind his back. The afternoon sun was hot and sweat ran down his face. He felt dizzy and thirsty. This was ridiculous. He was a colonel in the army, sitting handcuffed on a curb for absolutely no reason. A car pulled up quickly, and a man in a sergeant's uniform stepped out. He was Hispanic, probably in his late 40s with gray at his temples. His name tag said Rodriguez. He looked at the scene, the crowd, the cameras, Marcus in handcuffs on the curb, and Brennan standing with his arms crossed. "What's going on here?" Rodriguez asked, his voice tight. Brennan started to speak, but Chen spoke first. "Sergeant, Officer Brennan stopped this man for walking in the neighborhood. He claimed the man fit a burglary description, but there's no burglary report on file. The man has been handcuffed and detained for over 40 minutes. His identification is clean. He claims to be military, and there are military items, medals, and photos that support his story." Rodriguez walked over to where Marcus's belongings were scattered. He bent down and picked up a medal. He looked at it closely. Then he picked up a photo of Marcus in full uniform. His eyes widened. He picked up another photo, this one showing Marcus with a large group of soldiers. "Where did you serve?" Rodriguez asked Marcus directly. "Most recently, Middle East, sir. 18-month deployment. I commanded the 3rd Battalion. Rodriguez's face went pale. 3rd Battalion? Are you Colonel Thompson? Marcus nodded. Yes, sir. Colonel Marcus Thompson. Rodriguez looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. He turned to Brennan. Do you know who this is? This is Colonel Marcus Thompson. He's a decorated war hero. He commanded over 800 troops. My son served under him. There was an article about him in the military newsletter just last month. Brennan's face showed confusion, then defiance. How was I supposed to know that? He's in civilian clothes. He looked suspicious. I was doing my job. Your job? Rodriguez's voice rose. Your job is to serve and protect, not to harass innocent people. Get those handcuffs off him right now. Brennan hesitated and Rodriguez shouted, Now, Brennan. Brennan walked over to Marcus and roughly unlocked the handcuffs. Marcus stood up slowly, his legs stiff and unsteady. He rubbed his wrists where the cuffs had left red marks. Rodriguez approached Marcus with his hand extended. Colonel Thompson, I am so sorry. This should never have happened. Are you hurt? Do you need medical attention? Marcus shook his hand, still processing what had just occurred. I'm fine, thank you. This is unacceptable, Rodriguez continued. Completely unacceptable. I will personally drive you wherever you need to go. Your family must be worried sick. Marcus looked at his scattered belongings, his crushed flowers, his medals lying in the dirt. He looked at the crowd of people still watching and recording. He looked at Brennan, who stood with his arms crossed, still showing no remorse. I just want to go home, Marcus said quietly. I just want to see my family. Rodriguez nodded. Of course. Officer Chen, please help collect the colonel's belongings carefully. Chen quickly began gathering the items, handling each one with respect and care. She folded the uniforms properly and gently cleaned off the medals before placing them in the bag. Brennan spoke up. I was just doing my job. He should have identified himself properly. If he had just cooperated, he did cooperate. Rodriguez turned on Brennan. He showed you identification. He explained his situation. He sat in handcuffs for almost an hour without complaint. What more do you want? I'm not a mind reader, Brennan said defensively. How was I supposed to know he was really a colonel? Anyone can carry around medals and photos. I've seen people fake military service before. People like him? People like him? Rodriguez interrupted. You mean soldiers, heroes? American citizens who deserve respect? What exactly do you mean, Brennan? Brennan fell silent, but his expression said everything. Marcus knew exactly what he had meant. He had heard that tone, seen that look too many times in his life. Report to the station immediately, Rodriguez told Brennan. You're done for the day. We'll discuss this further with the chief. Brennan walked to his patrol car without another word. He got in and drove away, leaving Chen and Rodriguez with Marcus and the watching crowd. Rodriguez turned back to Marcus. Colonel, again, I cannot apologize enough. This is not how we operate. This is not how you should have been treated. Marcus nodded but said nothing. What could he say? That it was okay? It was not okay. That it did not matter? It mattered very much. That he understood? He understood far too well. His phone rang again. Sarah, he finally picked it up. Marcus, where are you? I've been calling for hours. I'm okay, Sarah, Marcus said into the phone, though his voice shook. There was a problem, but I'm okay now. I'll be home soon. I promise. He could hear the worry in her voice as she asked what happened. He told her he would explain everything when he got home. He did not want to talk about it on the street with everyone watching. He just wanted this day to be over. Sergeant Rodriguez drove Marcus home himself. The ride was quiet. Rodriguez tried to apologize several more times, but Marcus barely responded. He stared out the window, watching the familiar streets pass by. This was his hometown, the place he had grown up, the place he had left to serve his country. And this was how he was welcomed home. When they arrived at Marcus's house, Sarah burst out the front door before the car even stopped. Emma and James ran behind her. Sarah's face showed relief and worry and anger all at the same time. She pulled Marcus into a tight hug as soon as he stepped out of the car. What happened? She asked, holding his face in her hands. Are you hurt? Marcus shook his head. Rodriguez explained briefly what had occurred, his face red with embarrassment. Sarah's expression changed from worry to fury. He handcuffed you? For walking. For no reason at all? Mrs. Thompson, I assure you this will be fully investigated, Rodriguez said. Officer Brennan will face consequences for his actions. Consequences? Sarah's voice rose. My husband serves this country for 20 years and he can't even walk down a street without being treated like a criminal? Consequences aren't enough. Marcus put his hand on her shoulder gently. Sarah, please, not now. The kids are watching. Sarah looked at Emma and James, who stood on the porch looking scared and confused. She took a deep breath and nodded. Rodriguez handed Marcus a card with his contact information and left quietly. That evening, after the children were in bed, Marcus and Sarah sat at the kitchen table. He told her everything that had happened. The stop, the accusations, the handcuffs, the humiliation, his belongings scattered in the dirt. Sarah listened with tears in her eyes. This is wrong, she said. This is so wrong, Marcus. You could have been hurt. You could have been killed. We've seen the news. We know what happens. Marcus rubbed his face with his hands. He was exhausted, but his mind would not stop racing. I did everything right, Sarah. I was respectful. I followed every order. I stayed calm, and it still happened. That's what makes me so angry, Sarah said. You did nothing wrong. You shouldn't have to be perfect just to survive an encounter with police. You're a colonel, Marcus. You lead soldiers. You've earned medals, and you were treated like you were nothing. The next morning, Marcus's phone started ringing early. Friends, family, people from the military community, all calling with the same news. The video was everywhere. Someone had posted it online, and it had spread across social media overnight. By noon, local news stations were reporting the story. By evening, it had gone national. Marcus watched the video on his laptop. Seeing himself sitting on that curb, handcuffed and helpless, made him feel sick. He watched Brennan treat his belongings like garbage. He watched the crowd gather. He saw Officer Chen trying to intervene. He heard every word, every insult. The comments under the video numbered in the thousands. Most people expressed outrage and support. Some thanked him for his service and condemned the officer's behavior. But there were others, too. Comments calling him a liar, saying he should have obeyed faster, claiming he must have done something wrong. Marcus closed his laptop. He could not read anymore. His phone rang. It was a reporter asking for an interview. He declined politely. Then another reporter called. And another. Marcus stopped answering his phone. The military community responded quickly. Former soldiers who had served under Marcus began posting their own stories and photos. They talked about his leadership, his character, his dedication. A retired general who had worked with Marcus released a statement condemning the treatment of any veteran in such a manner. The police department also released a statement. The chief expressed regret for the incident and announced that Officer Brennan had been placed on administrative leave, pending a full investigation. The statement promised transparency and accountability, but Marcus knew how these things often went. An investigation might happen. The officer might get a slap on the wrist, maybe a few days of suspension, then everything would go back to normal. Nothing would really change. That afternoon, Sergeant Rodriguez came to Marcus's house again. This time he was not in uniform. He looked tired and older than he had the day before. Colonel Thompson, I wanted to come personally to give you an update, Rodriguez said. The investigation has begun. Brennan's history is being reviewed. I want you to know something. This isn't the first complaint against him. There have been others over the years. Marcus was not surprised.
How many others?
Rodriguez looked uncomfortable. 7 formal complaints in 15 years, all from minorities. Most were dismissed or resulted in minor discipline. I'm ashamed to say I didn't know the full extent until yesterday. I should have paid more attention. Why were they dismissed? Sarah asked sharply. Various reasons. Lack of evidence, conflicting statements, complainants not following through. The system failed those people. And it almost failed my husband, Sarah said. Rodriguez nodded. You're right. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for my department, for the failures, for everything. My son served under your husband. He tells me that Colonel Thompson saved his life during an attack. He carried him to safety under fire. My son owes his life to your husband. Rodriguez's voice broke. And your husband was treated like this in his own country? It's unforgivable. Marcus felt uncomfortable with the emotion. Your son was a good soldier. Any commander would have done the same. No, Rodriguez said firmly. Not any commander. A good commander. A great one. Which makes what happened even worse. Rodriguez explained that the chief wanted to meet with Marcus along with representatives from the city council. They wanted to discuss the incident and potential reforms. Marcus agreed to meet with them but made no promises about what he would say or do. After Rodriguez left, Marcus sat on his porch. Emma came out and sat beside him. She was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Dad, why did that police officer treat you that way?" Marcus struggled with how to answer. His daughter was 12, old enough to understand but young enough that he wanted to protect her from ugly truths. "Sometimes people make judgments about others based on how they look," he said carefully. "It's wrong, but it happens. Because you're black?" Emma asked directly. Marcus sighed. "Yes, sweetheart. Because I'm black. But you're a hero," Emma said, her voice confused and angry. "You help people. You protect people. You're one of the good guys. I know, baby. But some people don't see that first. They see skin color before they see anything else." Emma leaned against his shoulder. "That's stupid," Marcus smiled sadly. "Yes, it is. But that's why we have to keep working to change things, so that one day, people like you won't have to have conversations like this." That night, Marcus could not sleep. He kept replaying the incident in his mind. He thought about all the things that could have gone wrong. What if he had moved too quickly when reaching for his wallet? What if Brennan had thought his phone was a weapon? What if he had lost his temper and argued more forcefully? The possibilities haunted him. He had survived combat zones, led troops through dangerous situations, made life and death decisions. But a simple walk down an American street had left him shaken in a way that war never had. In war, he knew who the enemy was. Here, the threat wore a badge and claimed to be protecting and serving. Sarah found him sitting in the dark living room at 2 a.m. She sat beside him and took his hand. "You can't sleep either?" "I keep thinking about what could have happened," Marcus admitted. "I've trained for combat. I know how to handle dangerous situations, but this? I felt helpless, Sarah. Completely helpless. One wrong move, one wrong word, and—" "But you didn't make a wrong move," Sarah said firmly. "You did everything perfectly. And that's what makes me so angry. You shouldn't have to be perfect. You shouldn't have to calculate every movement, every word, just to stay safe." "I've been doing it my whole life," Marcus said quietly. "Being careful, being respectful, being twice as good to get half as far. I thought maybe things were getting better. Maybe they are slowly. But days like yesterday remind me how far we still have to go." The doorbell rang early the next morning. Marcus opened it to find a young man in an army uniform standing there. He looked familiar, but Marcus could not place him immediately. "Colonel Thompson, sir," the young man said, saluting. "I'm Lieutenant David Rodriguez. I served under you in the 3rd Battalion." Marcus returned the salute. "Rodriguez? You're the sergeant's son?" "Yes, sir. I saw the video. I had to come. Sir, what happened to you is wrong. You saved my life over there, and now I see how you're treated here. It's not right." Other soldiers started arriving throughout the day. Some Marcus knew, others he had never met. They came to show support, to thank him, to express their outrage. The street in front of Marcus's house filled with people in uniform and veterans in civilian clothes. News cameras showed up to film it all. Marcus stood on his porch, overwhelmed by the response. These were good people, people who understood service and sacrifice. But their support, while meaningful, could not erase what had happened. It could not change the fact that in his own country, after serving with honor, he had been treated as less than human by someone sworn to protect him. The video had been viewed millions of times. News shows played it on repeat, analyzing every moment. Experts debated police procedures and racial profiling. Politicians issued statements. Social media exploded with opinions. Everyone seemed to have something to say about what happened to Marcus Thompson. Marcus watched from inside his house as protesters gathered outside the police station. They carried signs demanding justice and accountability. Some signs had his photo. Others had the names of other victims of police misconduct. The crowd was diverse, people of all races and ages standing together. "You've become a symbol," Sarah said, standing beside him at the window. "Whether you wanted to be or not." Marcus felt the weight of that truth. He had spent his career leading from the front, but this was different. This was personal, painful, and public in ways he had never experienced. Every news outlet wanted an interview. Activists wanted him to join their cause. Lawyers offered to represent him. Everyone wanted something from him. His phone rang again. This time it was the mayor's office, asking him to attend a town hall meeting that evening. The community wanted to hear from him. Marcus agreed to go, though he was not sure what he would say. At the police station, Officer Derek Brennan sat in a small conference room. Internal affairs investigators had been questioning him for hours. The chief had made it clear this was serious. The video evidence combined with Brennan's history of complaints painted a damning picture. "You claimed he fit a burglary suspect description," one investigator said, "but there was no burglary report filed that day. Where did this description come from?" Brennan shifted in his seat. "I must have been mistaken about the date. Or maybe I heard it over the radio from another district. We checked all districts. No such report? Try again." Brennan's lawyer whispered something to him. Brennan leaned back and crossed his arms. "I saw a suspicious person in a neighborhood. I have the right to investigate. That's my job." "What made him suspicious?" the investigator pressed. "He was walking on a public sidewalk carrying flowers in a bag." "What about that was suspicious?" Brennan stayed silent. The investigator slid a folder across the table. "This contains 7 complaints filed against you over 15 years. All from minorities. Do you see a pattern here, Officer Brennan?" "Those complaints were investigated and dismissed," Brennan said defensively. "I was cleared every time. Cleared because complainants were scared to follow through. Cleared because their word was weighed against yours. Cleared because the system protected you instead of the people you're supposed to serve." Brennan's lawyer objected, but the investigator continued. "We have you on video, Officer Brennan. We have your words recorded. We have witnesses. This time there's no way to dismiss what happened. The question is whether you'll take responsibility or continue to deny the obvious." Brennan said nothing. His face was red, but his expression remained defiant. He believed he had done nothing wrong. In his mind, he was the victim of political correctness and media overreaction. That evening, the town hall was packed. Every seat was filled, and people stood along the walls and in the aisles. News cameras lined the back of the room. The police chief, the mayor, city council members, and community leaders sat on the stage. An empty chair waited for Marcus. When Marcus entered, the room erupted. Some people stood and applauded. Others chanted his name. Marcus felt uncomfortable with the attention, but walked to the stage and took his seat. The mayor opened the meeting by acknowledging what had happened and promising a full investigation. The police chief spoke about reforms and training. But people in the audience were not satisfied with vague promises. They wanted specifics. They wanted action. Words are cheap. Someone shouted, "We've heard promises before." "Nothing changes," others joined in. "Justice for Colonel Thompson. Hold Brennan accountable. Enough is enough." The mayor raised his hands, asking for calm. "I understand your frustration. That's why we're here tonight. We want to hear from you. We want to make real changes." "Then let the colonel speak," a woman called out. "Let him tell his story." All eyes turned to Marcus. He had not planned to speak at length, but he realized that he needed to. These people were angry on his behalf, but they were also angry for themselves and their own experiences. He owed them honesty. Marcus stood and approached the microphone. The room fell silent. He looked out at the faces, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, young, old, all waiting to hear what he would say. "My name is Marcus Thompson," he began. "For 20 years I've served in the United States Army. I've led troops in combat. I've been deployed to war zones. I've faced enemies who wanted to kill me, and I was prepared for all of that. I trained for it. I understood the risks." He paused, his voice steady but emotional. "But nothing prepared me for being treated like a criminal in my own hometown. Nothing prepared me for sitting in handcuffs on a curb while my wife called, worried about me. Nothing prepared me for having my service medals scattered in the dirt by someone who swore the same oath I did, to serve and protect." The room was absolutely quiet. People leaned forward, hanging on every word. Some people might say I should have identified myself faster, that I should have been more cooperative, but I did identify myself. I showed my license. I explained where I was coming from. I followed every order, and still I was treated as less than human. Marcus's hands gripped the podium. "This isn't just about one bad officer. This is about a system that allows this to happen again and again. This is about bias and prejudice being hidden behind badges. This is about people being judged by their skin color instead of their character." A woman in the front row wiped tears from her face. Others nodded in agreement. "I've spent my career protecting American values, freedom, equality, justice. But those values mean nothing if they don't apply to everyone. They mean nothing if a black man can't walk down a street without being suspected of a crime. They mean nothing if service and sacrifice don't earn respect. Marcus looked directly at the police chief. I don't want revenge. I want change. Real change. I want officers to be held accountable when they abuse their power. I want training that addresses bias, not just checks a box. I want a system where my children can grow up without fear of being targeted because of how they look. The room erupted in applause. People stood clapping and cheering. Marcus felt the emotion in the room, the shared pain and hope and determination. After Marcus spoke, others came to the microphone. A black teenager talked about being followed in stores. A Hispanic man described being stopped multiple times in his own neighborhood. An elderly black woman spoke about her grandson's experience with police. Story after story revealed a pattern of experiences similar to Marcus's. Officer Lisa Chen was in the audience. She had not planned to speak, but listening to the stories moved her. She stood and approached the microphone, her hands shaking slightly. My name is Lisa Chen. I'm a police officer, and I was there that day. I saw what happened to Colonel Thompson. Her voice wavered but grew stronger. I tried to intervene. I told Officer Brennan to wait for a supervisor. But I didn't do enough. I should have done more. I should have been braver. She looked at Marcus. Colonel, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't stand up stronger. I'm sorry the system made you sit there for almost an hour. You deserved better. Chen turned to face the crowd. I became a police officer to help people, to serve my community. But I've seen things that troubled me. I've heard comments from other officers that made me uncomfortable. I've watched as complaints were dismissed. And I stayed quiet because I was scared of being labeled a troublemaker or losing my job. Tears ran down her face. But after seeing what happened to the colonel, I can't stay quiet anymore. If I don't speak up, I'm part of the problem. We need officers who are willing to stand up to bad behavior, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. The crowd applauded Chen's honesty. Other officers in the audience looked uncomfortable, but a few nodded in agreement. The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, the mayor and police chief had committed to specific reforms. A civilian oversight board would be created. Officers would undergo enhanced training on bias and de-escalation. Body cameras would be mandatory for all officers. Complaints would be handled by an independent review board, and Officer Brennan would face a full disciplinary hearing. But Marcus knew that policies on paper meant nothing without follow-through. He had seen too many promised reforms that never materialized. Real change required constant pressure, constant vigilance. After the meeting, reporters surrounded Marcus. Microphones and cameras pressed in from all sides. Questions came rapid-fire. Colonel Thompson, are you satisfied with the city's response? Will you be taking legal action against Officer Brennan? What message do you have for other veterans? Marcus held up his hand, asking for quiet. I'll make one statement, and then I need to go home to my family. The reporters waited, cameras rolling. What happened to me happens to people every day. The only difference is that I had rank and recognition to protect me. Most people don't have that. Most people suffer in silence, and their stories are never heard. If my experience can shine a light on this problem, if it can lead to real change, then maybe some good can come from it. But talk is not enough. Promises are not enough. We need action. We need accountability, and we need it now. Marcus walked through the crowd to where Sarah waited. She took his hand and they walked to their car together. Behind them, reporters continued their broadcasts, analyzing his words and speculating about what would happen next. At home that night, Marcus lay in bed, exhausted but unable to sleep. His phone buzzed constantly with messages of support. The story had reached beyond the local community. Veterans across the country were speaking out. Civil rights organizations were rallying. The incident had touched something deep in the national consciousness. Sarah turned to him in the darkness. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about all the people who don't have a voice, all the people this happens to who don't have cameras recording, who don't have military rank to protect them, who don't have the resources to fight back. What happens to them? Sarah was quiet for a moment. You can't save everyone, Marcus. But you can use your voice to speak for them. Isn't that what leaders do? Marcus knew she was right. He had not asked for this platform, but he had it now. The question was what he would do with it. 3 weeks had passed since the incident. The investigation into Officer Derek Brennan was complete. The evidence was overwhelming. The video, witness statements, his history of complaints, and his own words recorded during the stop. The disciplinary hearing was scheduled for today. Marcus sat in the hearing room with Sarah beside him. Across the room, Brennan sat with his lawyer and union representative. Their eyes met briefly. Brennan looked away first, his face showing no emotion. The room filled with people, community members, reporters, other officers, and city officials. The three-member review board entered and took their seats. The chief among them was a retired judge appointed to ensure fairness. The hearing began with a review of the evidence. The video played on a large screen. Marcus watched himself being stopped, questioned, searched, and handcuffed. He watched his belongings scattered on the ground. He heard every word again. Even after seeing it many times, the humiliation felt fresh. Witnesses testified. Officer Chen spoke honestly about what she saw and heard. Sergeant Rodriguez explained how he discovered Marcus's true identity. Community members who had filed previous complaints against Brennan told their stories. One by one, a pattern emerged that could no longer be ignored. Brennan's lawyer tried to defend his actions. He argued that Brennan was following proper procedure, that he had reason to be suspicious, that Marcus could have been more cooperative. But the evidence contradicted every claim. The lawyer's words sounded hollow and desperate. When Brennan himself testified, he showed no remorse. He maintained that he did nothing wrong, that he was simply doing his job, that the situation had been blown out of proportion by the media and activists. His words revealed his true beliefs, that he had every right to stop Marcus, to question him, to treat him as a suspect based on nothing more than appearance and location. "I saw a person who didn't belong in that neighborhood," Brennan said. "I had a duty to investigate. Based on what evidence?" The retired judge asked. "Experience, intuition, years on the job." "You mean based on the color of his skin?" the judge pressed. Brennan's lawyer objected, but the judge continued. "Officer Brennan, you claimed Colonel Thompson fit a burglary suspect description. We've established no such burglary was reported. You claimed he was uncooperative, yet the video shows him following every instruction. You refused to let him contact his family for nearly an hour. You treated his military service with disrespect and mockery. At what point did your experience and intuition tell you that you might be wrong?" Brennan had no answer. When it was Marcus's turn to speak, he stood and faced the board. He had prepared a statement but decided to speak from his heart instead. "I've spent 20 years serving this country. I've led soldiers through some of the most dangerous places on earth. I've made decisions that affected lives. I've earned medals for bravery and sacrifice. But none of that mattered on that street. In that moment, I wasn't a colonel or a soldier or even a citizen deserving of respect. I was just another black man who Officer Brennan decided didn't belong." Marcus's voice remained steady, but emotion showed in his eyes. "This isn't about me being special because of my rank. This is about basic human dignity. Every person deserves to be treated with respect until they give reason not to be. I gave no such reason. I broke no law. I threatened no one, yet I was treated like a criminal." He looked directly at Brennan. "I want you to understand something, Officer Brennan. The way you treated me? That's how you treated someone who spent 2 decades defending this country. Imagine how you treat people who don't have that background. Imagine how you treat people who can't defend themselves." Marcus turned back to the board. "I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for accountability. If officers can treat a colonel this way with cameras recording and witnesses watching, what happens when no one is watching? What happens in the shadows where there are no cameras, no crowds, no consequences?" The room was silent when Marcus finished speaking. Even Brennan's lawyer looked troubled. The board deliberated for 2 hours. When they returned, the retired judge spoke for the group. "Officer Derek Brennan, this board has reviewed all evidence and testimony. We find that your actions on the day in question violated multiple department policies and procedures. You conducted a stop without reasonable suspicion. You detained a citizen without cause. You falsified the basis for your investigation. You treated that citizen with disrespect and disregarded his civil rights." The judge paused, looking at Brennan directly. "Furthermore, your history of complaints reveals a pattern of similar behavior. While previous complaints were dismissed or minimally addressed, this board cannot ignore the clear pattern of bias in your actions." Brennan's face remained impassive, but his hands gripped the table. "This board unanimously recommends termination of your employment with this police department. Additionally, we recommend that criminal charges be considered for violation of civil rights. Your badge and weapon have already been surrendered. Effective immediately, you are no longer a police officer. The room erupted. Some people cheered, others gasped. Brennan stood abruptly, his face red with anger. His lawyer grabbed his arm, speaking urgently. Brennan shook him off and stormed out of the room without looking back. Marcus felt no joy in the decision, only a sense of justice being served. One officer had been held accountable, but the system that protected him for 15 years remained. Real change would require much more than this. Outside the hearing room, reporters surrounded Marcus again, but this time he had something different to say. This decision is important, but it's only one step. True change requires systemic reform. That's why I'm partnering with Chief Rodriguez and community leaders to develop a comprehensive training program for all officers. He explained his plan. He would work with the police department to create bias awareness training based on real experiences. He would help establish a mentorship program, pairing young officers with community members. He would serve on the new Civilian Oversight Board to ensure accountability continued. I believe most officers are good people who want to serve their communities, Marcus said. But good intentions aren't enough. We need better training, better accountability, and better systems. We need officers to understand the communities they serve. We need them to see people, not threats. Officer Lisa Chen stood nearby listening. After the press conference, she approached Marcus. Colonel, I want to help. I want to be part of the solution. Marcus smiled at her. You already are, Officer Chen. What you did that day, trying to intervene, speaking out at the town hall, that took courage. We need more officers like you. Chen looked relieved. I was so scared. Scared of retaliation, scared of being labeled, scared of losing my career. But after seeing what you went through, I realized being scared is no excuse for staying silent. Fear is natural, Marcus said. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right despite the fear. In the following months, Marcus became deeply involved in police reform efforts. He attended training sessions, sharing his experience and perspective. He spoke with officers about implicit bias and the impact of their actions. Many officers were receptive, genuinely wanting to improve. Others were resistant, defensive. But slowly, conversations started happening that had never happened before. The Civilian Oversight Board began its work, reviewing complaints and policies. Marcus served as vice chair, bringing his military leadership experience to the role. The board established clear standards for accountability and transparency. For the first time, community members had real input into how they were policed. Sarah noticed changes in Marcus during this time. He seemed energized by the work, finding new purpose. But she also saw the toll it took. He received hate mail and online threats. Some people accused him of being anti-police. Others said he wasn't going far enough. Everyone seemed to have an opinion about what he should do or say. Are you okay? Sarah asked one evening as Marcus read through emails. I'm fine, he said, but his tired eyes told a different story. You don't have to carry this alone, Sarah reminded him. You've done so much already. You don't owe anyone more than you've already given. Marcus closed his laptop and took Sarah's hand. I know, but every time I think about stopping, I remember that day. I remember feeling powerless and scared, and I think about all the people who feel that way regularly. People who don't have the platform I have. How can I stop when I have the ability to help? Sarah squeezed his hand. Just remember to take care of yourself too. You can't help anyone if you burn out. 6 months after the incident, the police department held a formal ceremony. The mayor, the police chief, community leaders, and citizens gathered. Marcus stood on stage in his full military dress uniform, medals displayed on his chest. The chief approached with an official apology on behalf of the department. Colonel Thompson, on behalf of the entire department, I offer our sincerest apology for the treatment you received. What happened should never have occurred. We failed you. We failed our community. We failed the values we're supposed to uphold. The chief presented Marcus with a plaque recognizing his service and his work toward reform. You could have walked away. You could have sued us, shamed us, and left us to figure this out alone. Instead, you chose to work with us to help us become better. That shows the true measure of your character. Marcus accepted the plaque but used the moment to deliver a message. I appreciate this apology and this recognition. But I want to be clear. I didn't do this for plaques or ceremonies. I did it because change is necessary. Because justice requires action, not just words. He looked out at the crowd. The reforms we've implemented are a good start, but they're only a start. Real change requires constant effort, constant vigilance. It requires officers to examine their own biases. It requires community members to engage constructively. It requires all of us to commit to treating each other with dignity and respect. Marcus held up the plaque. This represents a promise that what happened to me won't happen to others. But promises mean nothing without follow-through. So I'll be watching, and I'll be holding everyone accountable. Because that's what service means. That's what duty demands. The crowd stood and applauded. Marcus saw familiar faces. Officer Chen, Sergeant Rodriguez, community members he had worked with, soldiers he had served with. He saw Emma and James in the front row with Sarah, their faces showing pride in their father. After the ceremony, Marcus stood outside talking with a young black teenager who had approached him shyly. "Sir, I saw what happened to you," the boy said. "It made me angry, but it also made me scared. If they treated you that way, what happens to someone like me?" Marcus put his hand on the boy's shoulder. "That's a fair question, and I won't lie to you. We still have a long way to go, but things are changing. Slowly, but they're changing. And you know what? You can be part of that change. You can demand better. You can hold people accountable. You can use your voice." "But I'm just a kid," the boy said. "Nobody listens to kids." "People said nobody would listen to one soldier's story either," Marcus replied. "But look what happened. Change starts with one voice, one story, one person refusing to accept injustice. Your voice matters. Your experience matters. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." The boy nodded, standing a little taller. "Thank you, sir." Marcus watched him walk away and thought about all the young people facing similar fears and challenges. He thought about the work still ahead, the battles still to fight, the progress still to make. That evening, Marcus sat on his porch with Sarah, Emma, and James. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. It was peaceful, the kind of moment Marcus had dreamed about during deployment. Emma leaned against his shoulder. "Dad, are you glad you came home?" Marcus thought about the question. His homecoming had been nothing like he imagined. Instead of rest and peace, he had found himself at the center of a national conversation about race and policing. Instead of quietly returning to civilian life, he had become a public figure and advocate for change. But looking at his family, feeling the evening breeze, watching the sunset in his own neighborhood where he now felt safe to walk, yes, he was glad. "Yes, sweetheart," he said, wrapping his arm around her. "I'm very glad I came home." James climbed onto his lap. "Are you going to keep helping people?" "I am," Marcus confirmed. "Because that's what we do. We see something wrong and we try to fix it. We don't give up just because it's hard." Sarah smiled at him from her chair. He reached over and took her hand. They sat together as darkness fell, a family reunited, stronger for what they had endured, committed to building a better future. Marcus knew the fight wasn't over. There would be setbacks and resistance. Change would be slow and frustrating. But he had spent 20 years serving his country in uniform. Now he would continue serving in a different way, fighting for justice, equality, and dignity for all people. The incident that brought him home had tried to break him. Instead, it revealed his true strength and gave him new purpose. Marcus Thompson, colonel, veteran, husband, father, and now advocate for change, was exactly where he needed to be, home and ready for whatever came next. Officer Derek Brennan sat in his patrol car, parked on the side of the quiet street. He was drinking coffee and looking at his phone. The afternoon had been slow, with no calls and no action. Brennan had been a police officer for 15 years. He thought he knew everything about his job and his community. He looked up from his phone and noticed a black man walking down the sidewalk. The man wore a hoodie and jeans and carried a duffel bag. Brennan's eyes narrowed. This was a nice neighborhood, mostly white families with money. In Brennan's mind, this man did not belong here. Brennan put down his coffee and started his car. He pulled out slowly and began following the man from behind. He watched every movement. The man was just walking normally, carrying flowers in his bag. But Brennan had made up his mind. Something was wrong. Someone like this did not belong in this neighborhood. Marcus heard the car behind him but did not think much of it. He was lost in thoughts about his family. Then he heard the sound that made his stomach drop, a police siren, just a quick burst. He turned around and saw the patrol car with its lights flashing. The car pulled up beside him and an officer stepped out. Marcus felt confused. He had done nothing wrong. He was just walking down a public street. He held his flowers and bag and waited to see what the officer wanted. "Stop right there," Brennan said, his hand resting on his belt near his weapon. Let me see some identification. Marcus stayed calm. His military training kicked in. Stay cool, follow instructions, be respectful. Of course, officer, he said politely. May I ask what this is about? Brennan's face hardened. I'll ask the questions. Show me your ID. Now. Marcus slowly reached for his wallet. He moved carefully, keeping his hands visible. He had heard too many stories about situations like this going wrong. I'm just reaching for my wallet in my back pocket, he said clearly. Hurry up, Brennan snapped. He looked Marcus up and down with obvious suspicion and dislike. Marcus handed over his driver's license. Brennan looked at it, then looked at Marcus. What are you doing in this neighborhood? I'm heading home, officer, Marcus explained. I just got back from overseas. I was in the military. I stopped to buy some gifts for my family. Brennan laughed, but it was not a friendly sound. Sure you were. And I'm the president. What's really in that bag? Marcus felt a flash of anger but controlled it. Military gear, sir. Personal items from my deployment. I'm a soldier. I can show you my military ID if you— Empty your pockets, Brennan interrupted. Put everything on the ground. And that bag too. Officer, I don't understand. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm just walking home. Brennan stepped closer, his voice getting louder. You fit the description of someone we're looking for. Empty your pockets now. Marcus knew he had no real choice. He slowly put down the flowers in his bag. He took out his phone, his wallet, some coins, and his keys. He placed them on the ground as Brennan watched. The bag too, Brennan ordered. Marcus unzipped his duffel bag. Inside were his military uniforms, his medals, photos from deployment, and personal letters. He started to take items out, but Brennan grabbed the bag from him and dumped everything onto the sidewalk. Military medals scattered across the concrete. Photos of Marcus with his unit fell into the dirt. His carefully folded uniforms tumbled out. Marcus watched in disbelief as this officer treated his most precious possessions like trash. Please, officer, those are my service medals, Marcus said, trying to stay calm. His voice shook slightly. Brennan kicked through the items with his boot. He picked up a photo of Marcus in uniform. This could be anybody. Probably not even you. Where'd you steal this stuff? I didn't steal anything. That's me in the photo. I'm Colonel Marcus Thompson. I just returned from an 18-month deployment. If you would just listen— Colonel? Brennan laughed again, cruelly. Right, and I'm a general. You people always have some story. Always claiming to be something you're not. The words "you people" hung in the air. Marcus understood exactly what Brennan meant. This was not about a misunderstanding. This was about racism, pure and simple. Marcus had served his country for 20 years, led hundreds of soldiers, earned medals for bravery, and now he was being treated like a criminal on an American street. I want to speak to your supervisor, Marcus said firmly but politely. You'll speak to whoever I tell you to speak to, Brennan shot back. Turn around. Put your hands behind your back. What? Why, I haven't done anything. You're resisting and being uncooperative. Turn around now or I'll make you turn around. Marcus felt his heart racing, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting angry would only make things worse. He had commanded hundreds of soldiers through dangerous situations. He could handle this. He turned around slowly and put his hands behind his back. The handcuffs clicked around his wrists, tight and cold. Marcus felt humiliated. He was a colonel in the United States Army, and he was being handcuffed on a street for no reason. His medals lay scattered on the ground. His flowers were crushed. His personal items were in the dirt. People started coming out of their houses. Some held up their phones, recording. Marcus noticed a few faces showing concern and confusion. Others just stared. Brennan walked Marcus to the patrol car and made him sit on the curb. The concrete was hard and uncomfortable. Marcus sat there in handcuffs while Brennan went back to pick up his belongings, handling them roughly and stuffing them into the duffel bag without care. Marcus's phone rang in the pile of items on the ground. He saw Sarah's name on the screen. She would be worried now. He had promised to be home soon. Now he was sitting in handcuffs on a curb and he could not answer her call. Officer, please, my wife is calling. She's expecting me home. Can I at least tell her I'm delayed? No, Brennan said simply. He let the phone ring until it stopped. Another patrol car pulled up. A younger officer stepped out. A woman with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her name tag read Chen. She looked at the scene. Marcus in handcuffs on the curb, his belongings scattered around. the crowd of people watching and recording. "Brennan, what's going on?" Officer Chen asked, suspect fitting a description. "Found him in a neighborhood where he doesn't belong, carrying a bag full of stolen military gear." Officer Chen looked confused. She walked over to where the items were scattered. She picked up one of the medals and examined it. Then she looked at the photos. Her expression changed. "Brennan, these look real. This guy is in uniform in these pictures. And these medals, stolen," Brennan interrupted. "He probably stole them from a real soldier. These people do that all the time." Officer Chen looked uncomfortable. "I think we should call the sergeant. Let him sort this out. I don't need the sergeant. I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this job longer than you've been alive. You go handle your own calls and let me handle mine." Chen looked at Marcus, then at Brennan. She seemed torn. Finally, she walked back to her car, but she did not leave. She stayed watching and waiting. Marcus sat on the curb, hands cuffed behind his back, and wondered how his homecoming had turned into this nightmare. He had survived deployment in a war zone, only to be treated like a criminal in his own country. The afternoon sun beat down on him. His phone rang again, Sarah still trying to reach him. And still Brennan would not let him answer.